They say in the village of Kumasi, there once lived a boy so cruel, so cold-hearted, that even the ancestors turned their faces away in shame. This is not a story with a happy ending. This is not a tale where love conquers all. This is the story of Kofi, the ungrateful son, and the terrible price he paid for forgetting where he came from. But before I tell you how Kofi became a monster, let me tell you how he became a prince. In a small farming village, there lived a man named Kwaku and his wife Alma. They were the poorest people you could imagine. Their hut had holes in the roof. Their clothes were patched and repatched until there was more patch than cloth. They ate once a day if they were lucky, twice a day if the gods smiled upon them. But they had one treasure that made them richer than any king, their son, Kofi. When Kofi was born, his mother nearly died bringing him into this world. The midwives said it was a miracle she survived. His father held the tiny baby in his calloused hands and wept tears of joy. "We will give him everything," Kwaku promised his exhausted wife. "Everything we never had." And they did. Oh, how they tried. Kwaku would wake up before the roosters crowed, when the world was still dark and cold, to work in other men's farms. He would break his back under the hot sun, harvesting yams and cassava that would never belong to him, just to earn a few coins. His hands bled. His muscles screamed. But every evening, he would come home with a small piece of dried fish or a handful of groundnuts for his son. "Eat, Kofi," he would say, even as his own stomach growled with hunger. "You're growing. You need your strength." Alma would sew clothes for the wealthy women in the village, her fingers working by candlelight long after Kofi had gone to sleep. She would ruin her eyes squinting at tiny stitches, but she never complained. Every coin she earned went toward her son's future. One day, she would tell Kofi as she braided his hair, "You will be educated. You will wear fine clothes. You will never know the suffering your father and I have known." And Kofi? Little Kofi would smile and hug his mother and promise, "When I am big and successful, I will build you a mansion. I will dress you in the finest cloth. I will give you servants to cook your food and fetch your water. You will never work another day in your life." These words made his parents' sacrifices feel worthwhile. They would look at each other and smile, imagining a future where their suffering had meaning. When Kofi was 7 years old, the village school headmaster came to their hut. "Your son is brilliant," he told the parents. "He learns faster than any student I've ever taught. But I cannot continue teaching him for free. The school fees must be paid." Kwaku and Alma looked at each other. They had no money. But that night, Alma did something that still makes people weep when they tell this story. She cut off her beautiful long hair she had grown since she was a girl, hair that reached her waist, hair that was her pride, and sold it to a wig maker in the city. The money paid for Kofi's school fees for 1 year. When Kofi saw his mother's shorn head, she smiled through her tears. "Hair grows back, my son. But education? Education is forever. Study hard and make us proud." And Kofi did study hard. He was the top student in his class year after year. His teachers praised him. Other parents pointed to him as an example. "Why can't you be like Kofi?" they would ask their own children. But here's what nobody saw. As Kofi grew older and more educated, as he learned to read and write and speak proper English, something dark was growing in his heart.
Pride, shame,
resentment. He began to look at his parents differently. His father's rough, calloused hands embarrassed him. His mother's simple country accent made him cringe. Their small, leaking hut felt like a prison. When his classmates asked where he lived, he would point vaguely in another direction. When they asked about his parents, he would change the subject. He stopped inviting his parents to school events because he was ashamed of their shabby clothes. His mother noticed. "Kofi, my son, have we done something wrong? You barely speak to us anymore." "I'm just busy with my studies, Mama," he would say, not meeting her eyes. But Alma wasn't fooled. A mother knows her child's heart. She said nothing, but late at night, Kwaku would find her crying quietly in the darkness. When Kofi turned 18, he received a scholarship to attend university in the capital city. It was the proudest day of his parents' lives. They used the last of their savings to buy him new clothes, a suitcase, and supplies for his journey. The morning he left, his father held him tight. "Remember where you came from, my son. Remember the sacrifices. And remember, no matter how high you climb, we are still your parents." Kofi nodded impatiently, eager to leave the village behind. His mother pressed a small cloth bundle into his hands. "I've saved a little money for you. It's not much, but—" "It's fine, Mama," Kofi said, barely glancing at the bundle before stuffing it in his bag. He didn't even hug her properly before leaving. He didn't look back as he walked down the dusty road toward the bus station. If he had, he would have seen his mother collapse in his father's arms, weeping as if she would never see her son again. She was right to weep. At university, Kofi transformed himself. He told people his parents were dead. He invented a new history for himself, said his father had been a wealthy merchant who died in a tragic accident, leaving him an inheritance. He learned to speak with a polished accent. He wore expensive clothes bought on credit. He made friends with the children of diplomats and businessmen. And he was brilliant. So brilliant that after graduation, he was hired by a prestigious company in the city. Within 5 years, he had climbed the corporate ladder. Within 10 years, he was a director. Within 15 years, he was wealthy beyond his parents' wildest dreams. He bought a mansion in the richest neighborhood. He drove a Mercedes-Benz. He married a sophisticated woman from a prominent family. He had 2 children who went to elite private schools. He had servants, a cook, a driver, a gardener. He had everything his parents had dreamed for him, everything they had sacrificed for. And he never sent them a single coin. He never wrote them a single letter. He never visited once. Back in the village, Kwaku and Amma grew old. Kwaku's back, broken from years of hard labor, bent further and further until he could barely stand straight. Amma's eyes, ruined from sewing by candlelight, grew dim until she could barely see. They lived in the same leaking hut. They survived on the charity of neighbors who remembered the kind couple who had worked themselves to the bone for their son. "Have you heard from Kofi?" people would ask gently. "He's very busy," Amma would say, her voice breaking. "Very important job in the city. I'm sure he'll visit when he can." But everyone knew the truth. Everyone had heard stories of Kofi's success. Travelers from the city reported seeing him in his fine clothes, his fancy car, his beautiful house. He had not forgotten his parents. He had chosen to abandon them. One day, Kwaku fell ill. A terrible illness that made him cough blood and waste away to nothing. The village healer shook his head. "He needs medicine from the city hospital. Medicine I cannot provide. It will cost a lot of money." Amma sold everything they owned. Their cooking pots, their sleeping mats, the few chickens they had. It wasn't enough. She begged from door to door, and the kind villagers gave what little they could. Still not enough. In desperation, Amma decided to go to the city, to find her son, to beg him for help. She made the long journey by bus, using the last of the money the villagers had collected. When she arrived in the city, she was overwhelmed by the noise, the crowds, the tall buildings. She asked people for directions to the wealthy neighborhood where her son lived. When she finally found the mansion, she stood outside the gate, barely able to believe her eyes. It was like a palace. Her son lived here? Her Kofi? The security guard looked at this old woman in her faded cloth and frowned. "What do you want?" I'm here to see Kofi. Kofi Mensah. I'm his mother." The guard laughed. "Mr. Mensah's mother? The boss's mother is a refined lady. She comes here sometimes in her own car. You're clearly trying to scam your way in. Get lost, old woman, before I call the police." "Please," Amma begged. "Just tell him Amma is here. He'll remember. Please." The guard radioed to the house. After a few minutes, he came back shaking his head. "Mr. Mensah says he doesn't know any Amma. He says his parents are dead and you're a con artist. Now leave before I have you arrested." Amma stood there, stunned. Through the bars of the gate, she could see the beautiful gardens, the fountain, the luxury. And there, on the second-floor balcony, she saw him. Her son. Her Kofi. He was looking right at her. Their eyes met for just a moment, and then he turned and walked back inside. He had looked at his own mother and denied her. Alma made the long journey back to the village in a daze. She never told Quokka what happened. She told him she couldn't find their son, that he must have moved. She didn't want to break his heart even more. 2 weeks later, Quokka died. He died calling for his son, asking when Kofi would visit. Alma held his hand and lied. "Soon, my love. He's coming soon. He's just very busy." Those were the last words Quokka heard before he closed his eyes forever. The village buried him. The same neighbors who had helped them over the years carried his body to the grave. Alma stood there, a broken woman, and whispered, "I'm sorry I failed you. I'm sorry our son forgot us." After the funeral, Alma did something strange. She went to the village shrine, where the old priestess communed with the ancestors. "I want justice," she told the priestess. "Not revenge. Just justice. Let him know what he's done. Let the ancestors judge him." The priestess looked into Alma's eyes and saw a lifetime of suffering there. She performed the ritual. She called upon the ancestors, and they answered. In the city, Kofi's life continued its golden path. His business deals succeeded. His wealth grew. His reputation soared. He was invited to dine with ministers and ambassadors. Magazines featured him as an example of African success. But then, strange things began to happen. It started with his sleep. Every night, he would dream of his parents. He would see his mother cutting off her hair. He would see his father's bleeding hands. He would hear their voices calling his name. He would wake up drenched in sweat, his heart pounding. "Just stress," his wife said. "You work too hard." But the dreams got worse. Soon, he wasn't just dreaming. He would see his mother's face in mirrors. He would hear his father's cough in quiet rooms. Food would turn to ash in his mouth. Water tasted like tears. His children began to avoid him. "Papa smells funny," his daughter whispered to her mother. It was true. Despite bathing multiple times a day, Kofi began to smell like death. Like rotting vegetation. Like an open grave. His wife moved to a separate bedroom. His business partners started making excuses not to meet with him. His servants whispered that the house was cursed. Then came the night everything changed. Kofi was alone in his study when he heard a knock at the door. Before he could answer, the door opened, and 2 figures walked in. His parents. But not as he remembered them. They were corpse-like, decayed, their eyes hollow and accusing. "No," Kofi whispered. "You're not real. You're just in my head." "Are we?" his father's voice rasped. "Is guilt just in your head, son? Is shame just a dream?" "I gave you everything," Kofi shouted. "I became exactly what you wanted. We wanted a good man," his mother's spirit said softly. "We got a successful monster. We wanted a son who remembered love. We got a stranger who remembered only ambition." "Get out," Kofi screamed. "Leave me alone." But they didn't leave. Night after night they appeared. And slowly, Kofi began to unravel. His business deals fell apart. Partners discovered he had been cutting corners, making shady arrangements. His reputation crumbled. His wealth began to drain away through failed investments and legal troubles. His wife divorced him, taking half of everything. His children, grown now, refused to see him. "You're not really our father," his son told him coldly. "You're just a man we lived with. We learned from watching you that family means nothing. Success is everything. Thank you for that lesson." The irony wasn't lost on Kofi. He had treated his parents as disposable, and now his own children saw him the same way. He lost the mansion. He lost the car. He lost everything except one small apartment. And every night, his parents' spirits visited him. Not to torment him, they simply sat there, watching him with sad eyes. One night, Kofi finally broke. "What do you want from me?" he sobbed. "My father is dead. I can't apologize to him." "What do you want?" "Your mother still lives," the spirit said. Kofi's blood ran cold. "Mama is alive? She lives in the same hut, dying slowly of a broken heart, just as your father did." The next morning, Kofi made the journey back to his village for the first time in over 30 years. He took a bus because he no longer had a car. He wore simple clothes because his fine garments were gone. He looked like what he truly was, a broken, middle-aged man with nothing. When he arrived at his childhood home, he barely recognized it. The hut was even more decrepit than he remembered. He knocked softly on the wooden door. "Who is it?" came a weak, old voice. "Mom, it's me. It's Kofi."
Silence.
Then the door opened slowly. An ancient woman stood there, so frail she looked like she might blow away in the wind. Her eyes were clouded, nearly blind. But she reached out a trembling hand and touched his face. "Kofi," she whispered. "My son? Is it really you?" He fell to his knees before her, weeping like a child. "Mama, I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry.
Forgive me. Please forgive me." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Come inside." They sat together in that tiny, leaking hut. Kofi told her everything, his shame, his pride, his denial, his fall. He wept and begged for forgiveness. Alma listened, without speaking. When he finished, she said, "Do you know what hurt the most? Not the poverty, not the hunger, not the hard work. It was lying to your father as he died, telling him you were coming soon, watching him close his eyes, believing his son still loved him. That was the deepest pain." "I did love him," Kofi cried. "I loved you both. I was ashamed." "You loved yourself more," Alma said simply. "You loved comfort more. You loved status more. That's not love, Kofi. That's just selfishness, wearing love's mask. Can you ever forgive me?" Alma looked at her son with her dim eyes. "The ancestors will judge you, not me. But I can tell you this. Forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. Your father died not knowing if his son remembered him. That cannot be undone. The years of abandonment cannot be unlived. I forgive you because I'm your mother and I'm tired of carrying hate. But forgiveness doesn't mean everything is fixed. Some broken things stay broken." Kofi stayed in the village. He sold the last of his possessions and used the money to repair his mother's hut, to buy her medicine, to make her final years comfortable. He cared for her himself, bathing her, feeding her, sitting with her through long nights. She died 2 years later, in her sleep, with her son holding her hand. Her last words were, "I forgive you, but you must forgive yourself. That will be harder." She was right. Kofi lived the rest of his life in that village, in that humble hut. He never remarried. He never had more children. He became known as a cautionary tale, the man who had everything and lost it all because he forgot where he came from. When he died, many years later, the villagers buried him next to his parents. Some say his spirit still wanders, warning young people against the sin of ingratitude. Others say he finally found peace, reunited with the parents he betrayed. But the lesson of his story remains. Your parents gave you life. They sacrificed their dreams so you could have yours. They went hungry so you could eat. They suffered so you could have comfort. And no success, no wealth, no achievement will ever be worth anything if it costs you your humanity. The tree that forgets its roots will fall in the smallest storm. The child who forgets their parents will find themselves alone when their own children forget them. This is not a curse. This is simply balance. This is justice. This is the story of Kofi, the ungrateful son. May we all learn from his terrible mistake. The end. As the Akan proverb says, when you follow the path of your father, you learn to walk like him. But if you deny your father's path, you will stumble in the darkness. In the end, the story of Kofi is more than a folktale. It is a mirror held up to all of us. A reminder that no matter how far we rise, no matter how bright our future becomes, we must never forget the hands that lifted us, fed us, protected us, and prayed for us before we even knew how to pray for ourselves. Because success without gratitude is just failure wearing gold. If this story touched you, taught you something, or made you reflect on your own journey, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. More powerful African folktales, deep lessons, and unforgettable stories are coming your way. Stay humble, stay grateful, and remember, even the tallest tree begins as a seed cared for by someone.